Welcome back. Today we're going to talk tack. Tack is everything we put on a horse, to work it, to walk it, whatever we stick on a horse is tack. So it's a long one today. Go get a beer, get yourself a bottle of wine, some snacks, and come back because we're going to settle in for a long talk about tack. Before you do that, hit the subscribe button. And also, I know you all have opinions on this stuff, so leave them in the comment section. Tell me what you like, what you don't like, how you'd never ever put that on your horse, how you'd always use that on your horse. Leave a comment in the comment section and join us for a nice long talk about tack. The first most important piece of equipment that we talk about when we talk about what we put on a horse to go out, actually it's all important, but are bridles. Now, strangely enough, you'd think it wouldn't be controversial, the idea of a bridle on a horse, but it is, because a lot of people do not want us to put something metal in a horse's mouth called a bit. All I've got to say to those people is I've managed to survive 60 years on this planet, and I plan to stick around a little bit longer, and I'm not gonna, if I don't get on a thoroughbred without a bit in its mouth. If you want to do that, you go right ahead, but I'm not going to gallop 400 or 500 kilos of racing thoroughbred in a bitless bridle. People can do it, that's up to them. I use a kind of bridle known as a Micklem bridle. It comes from the riding horse world, not really well known in racing, although more and more trainers are starting to use them. And you'll see what makes this bridle a little bit different than a regular bridle when we put it on a horse, which we will show you a bit later. But this is what a standard Micklem bridle looks like. A regular bridle, a standard exercise bridle, looks like this. Straight cheek pieces, again, snaffle bit. On this bridle, on any bridle, you can have your choice of bits. That controversial metal thing, cruel thing that you put in a horse's mouth. As you can see, we use your standard snaffle bit. This kind of bit is just a standard bit that everybody who rides and wants to stay alive uses. And it is a bit that sits on the bars of the horse's mouth where there is no teeth, and it braces itself against the roof of the horse's mouth. Now, it's important with any bit, and especially a snaffle bit, because it is bent in the middle like this, to have what we call good, steady hands. This bit sits in the horse's mouth like this, and if you pull on it, it's going to knock on the roof of the horse's mouth, which is not what you want. What you want is a steady, nice contact, and this bit will be sort of braced against the horse's mouth. And for a thoroughbred to gallop, they actually use that leverage as a point for when they're galloping. They rely on your hands to be steady and not move, and to have a nice contact, not too hard, not too soft, and not moving around. That's important. There are other kinds of bits that we can and sometimes do use. Another bit that we do use sometimes, the Americans call a ring bit. The French call it an American bit. Strangely. And it is a standard snaffle bit with an extra ring here. And all of this goes in the horse's mouth. What this ring does, it's an aid to help keep your horse straight. If you have a young horse that tends to drift in one direction or another, or tends to get a little bit too strong. Now, I don't believe in a stronger bit for a stronger problem, but in some cases, you need the control of an American bit, and you'll see a lot of horses racing in an American bit. They might not necessarily use it in training, but they use it in racing. We use this on 2 horses of the string that we have. The rest of them are going in a simple snaffle, and the reasons we have for using it are those horses tend not to stay straight, or one tends to get a little too strong. And we have 1 horse that races in this, and the rest race in a standard Micklem bridle and a standard snaffle bit. Now, as you go through the years of training, you tend to collect things because you want to try things, and sometimes it's a bad idea and sometimes it's a good idea. But if you want to see bits, this bottom drawer is my bit drawer. These are all the bits we've tried and tested and rejected over the years, and I should probably sell them or get rid of them. Some of them are still perfectly good bits. A lot of them are just backup snaffle bits. This is a loose ring snaffle bit. This is a D-ring snaffle bit. This just gives a little bit of extra guidance on the side of the horse's mouth. This is a standard snaffle bit, but with what we call, well, in French we call needles. It's not needles, it's just long pieces on each side. This is useful for very young horses that are just coming into training that might need the extra pressure of the side pieces here to stay straight and to learn to turn. We don't use this very often at all, but we do use it on some young horses to get them started. And we have, this is a bit we've seen on some people do use. This is called a lugging bit. This is a straight bit, so it doesn't have that bend in the middle like a snaffle bit. And it's got this extra piece along the bottom, and it looks like a weapon. It's actually not. It's actually quite a kind bit. And it's called a lugging bit because it's really made for horses that really tend to lean out or lug out and not take those turns. I bought this for a specific horse that we had some trouble teaching to turn. And honestly, I didn't actually like it very much. And you cannot, in France, race with this bit. But we have it. We might one day need to try it again. I'm not sure. Another kind of bit, and this is important because it can be useful, are tongue depressor bits. This is an Australian made tongue depressor bit. This is one with a D-ring. This is the same bit with a loose ring, snaffle, if you like that. And this bit is a bit of a weapon because you have to have very good hands to use this. You wouldn't give this to just anybody, but it goes in the horse's mouth straight like this, and this tongue depressor bit covers the back of the horse's tongue. So they can't, well, in theory, they can't lift that tongue up to block the breathing apparatus. And that's important because you have to remember something. Horses do not have a gag reflex like we do. Horses cannot vomit, so whatever you put in their mouth isn't going to create any kind of a reaction like that. So this can sit as far back in the horse's mouth as you want. It's not going to bother them that way. It's just going to stop them under effort from letting the back of their tongue roll up and block the airway. Now this bit we've used with a couple of horses that have had breathing issues. I'm not a huge fan. I try to avoid it if we can. We can also put a tongue tie on a horse. In some countries, tongue ties are illegal, which is insane. That's maybe another episode. But a tongue tie performs the same same effect. It keeps the horse's tongue down and stops it from rolling up and blocking that airway. Some trainers run all their horses in tongue ties. We have a few, 2 or 3 that we race with a tongue tie. This is another form of tongue bit, and this turns. The horse can play with this. This is, again, made more for young horses that need to learn to relax and keep their tongue down. You put the big part in the back and the little part in the front, but it has more flexibility in it, and so it's a kinder bit than these Australian bits, which really kind of lug that tongue down in the back and don't let any movement happen there. What else do we have? We have straight bits. Again, for young horses, this is a straight rubber bit with the sides. This you'd use on a yearling or a 2-year-old that needs to learn what the bit is and how to respect the bit. This is what they call a happy mouth bit. Same thing, straight bit, very kind, bendy bit. Does not give you much control, so you want to be careful what you put this on, but it can be a very useful bit for certain horses. And what else we have? More bits, more big ring snaffle bits. This is a bit we, again, almost never use. This is, again, a bit for a young horse. This is a thing for them to play with, so they get used to sort of moving their tongue around in the bit and getting comfortable with the bit. You can see by the rust on this, it hasn't been used in quite some time. Oh, yes, the early days. There was a bit company, can't even remember the name. Oh, no, this is just a cherry roller. This is a snaffle bit that's designed, it has these things that roll on it that get the horse to play with it somehow. I don't think I've ever used it. This is an American bit called a Myler bit, and it's made basically for dressage horses, and the idea is that when you move the reins and move the hands, the sides of the bit move independently. Now, why I bought this? Because I listened to some sales pitch and thought it might be a good idea. It's actually, I don't use it anymore. If anybody wants to buy it, contact me. Almost never used. Standard snaffle. Another young horse bit. Kind of more of the same down here. This is interesting. This comes from the trotter world. This is just a standard snaffle bit, but with a leather coating and leather guide along the bars. This is to soften up the bit for a horse that might be injured on the sides of its mouth. And this leather is a little bit kinder, although this leather isn't very kind because it needs a good coat of grease. Oh, this is quite a nice loose ring snaffle, but it's very heavy. Which brings me, this is a filled, this is a heavy bit right here. And when we race, this is filled as well, we use a hollow snaffle, which is what this is. We wouldn't race in this because the D-rings we don't need, but there's nothing, this is a hollow bit, so it's much lighter than some of these other bits. Right, so put all this back in my bit drawer. We don't need any of those. Right, that's bits and bridles. Let's talk about saddles. This is a standard exercise saddle, which we use in the morning for galloping. This one is mine. Has my little name on it somewhere. And it is a full tree saddle, not a half tree saddle. I don't allow half tree saddles here. Don't know how much it weighs, but it's not very heavy. It is leather. And pretty much regular stirrups. We have aluminum ones and the carbon ones. Mine are carbon, which actually isn't the greatest idea because they have some tread on the bottom here and your foot can get stuck in here if you do fall. I know this from personal experience. Here's an exercise saddle naked without any stirrups or girth on it. This is the basic model. Just got this one repaired, which is why it's not set up to go. And this is what they look like before you put the stuff on. Girths. We use a couple of different kinds of girths. I use, and I still like because I'm old-fashioned, this is just a double fabric girth. We have two, I don't know what you call them in English, sanglons is what we call them in French, and that you put the two on. They're held together here, and then there's elastic on the one side and non-elastic on the other side, and you have to watch because the elastic gets worn down over time, and this will have to be repaired or thrown out at some point so I don't kill myself. And over this girth we put a girth sleeve which protects the horse from the girth, and that's one kind of girth. Another kind we do use is a synthetic girth. This one is made by Professional's Choice. It's a good girth. I'm not a fan of them, but this one needs to be thrown out, which is why it's on the side here. Look, this is what happens when you use your girth over time. That elastic just gets eaten up by the sweat and by the use. I mean, you have to keep in mind that these girths go on 4 or 5 horses every day. They get cleaned out in between, but this is a girth, an exercise girth that's meant to not slip. It's got a non-skid surface on it, which you can take off and clean. Thank you very much. Excellent idea. Thank you, Velcro. And then you have your elastic on both sides. I'm not a fan of elastic on both sides of a girth because in the wrong hands, it's very easy to over-tighten. You have to be really careful to know how to use a girth like this, so you don't put it in the wrong hands. You don't put this one in any hands, but it's time for this one to go. This is just a Norton straight-up exercise girth with elastic on only one side, so this is kind of like a little bit better. This is in pretty good shape because it's relatively new. I prefer myself the double fabric girth, but they're hard to find these days, as you can tell by the age of mine. And a lot of people have gone to the synthetic material. I'm okay with this one. This is kind of a compromise for me between this and the other Professional's Choice one. It's okay. It's cheap enough to replace. It's made by Norton, and it's relatively kind. It doesn't hurt the horse in the wrong hands. But like everything, moderation. You need to be tight, but not too tight. The horse needs to be able to breathe and work properly without being hindered or worse, being hurt by being pinched somewhere along the girth line, which doesn't make anybody happy. The last thing I guess we can talk about is our exercise sheets. When it's cold, we put a sheet on them in the morning underneath the saddle and above everything else. Unlike riding horse tack, our sheets are full squares. They're not cut out around your leg or anything like that because we put it over the top of all the material. And this is my standard blue sheet, which we use most of the time. We have also rain sheets, which is the same kind of square sheet, but against the rain, lined with sort of a jute liner. Very basic. A lot of tack in racing, you have to remember, is made to last. because it's used under intensive conditions and it's used a lot. And then we have wool Newmarket rug. My Newmarkets are very tired, so I'm not even going to pull one out. But this is for when it's the coldest outside. We use these sheets here. And just a word about boots and bandages. This is a bandage that you see some horses with fancy colored bandages on their front legs when they go out. I don't believe in bandages in general because basically they do nothing except waste staff time, get dirty, and they can do more harm than good. Everybody has their incredible different idea on this. We have this set of bandages for one reason. We have one horse that knocks into himself in the morning. He tends to touch his joint, fetlock joint. And when we put that on for protection for him, because I don't want to put a set of boots on. Although all of these things I rarely use. The horse has to give me a reason to use them. And these are really dirty. One really important thing about boots, you can see the problem right there. See that sand coming out? When you put this on a horse's leg and you're galloping him over a sand track, the sand is going to get up inside there, and you can put these on as tight as you want, and it's still going to go between the boot and the skin a bit. So you risk to get rubs and things like that. And plus, we just don't need them. Our horses don't knock into each other. You only use them for a horse that really has shown you that it's gonna knock into itself somehow, and you want to fix that problem with your farrier and with how you're working the horse and getting the horse to collect, and you're trying to avoid having to actually put anything on its legs to solve a problem when the problem needs to be solved higher up in another way. We're going to tack up its magic, get him ready to go out to work, and I'll show you what we put on and why. First, start with a relatively clean racehorse. Always a good idea. We always put a little bit of ointment on the commissure. I don't even know what this is in English. Right where the bit sits, just to protect against any cracking there, because if you have a problem there, it's very hard to heal. So, we're going to do the saddle bit first. We start with what we call the torchon. It's just a towel made to put under the saddle as a first layer. It picks up the sweat, protects the back, and we change them and wash them often. Then we have a sheepskin from IKEA, which we need to buy some new ones. We put the sheepskin fluffy side down on the back. Then we have a basic saddle pad. This is memory foam. It's quite tired. I need to replace it, but I can't find any more like this. This is a very thin memory foam saddle pad. It goes on top of the sheepskin. Then, because it's a little bit chilly out still, not quite summer here, we put on our exercise sheet. And once we've got all that straight, time for the saddle. Goes on top of everything. We pull up everything from the withers to make there's no pressure on the withers. We fold up, he's a big horse, so fold up the corner of our exercise sheet like that. So I have a girth sleeve that I'm going to put on because I use this girth on many horses in a morning. And so this is to pick up the sweat, and it's for hygiene reasons. So I put the girth sleeve on. And it also protects the horse from this bit of leather here. And then we do the part no horse really likes. You need to come in here for that. We tighten up this girth. So, he's a big horse and this is a small girth. But I always leave my hand here to protect so I don't pinch him when I tighten it. And I'm gonna do the other side here. I know from riding this horse often that it's about 3 or 4 holes here and 3 holes on the other side. So, make sure nothing is pinched. Make sure we have nothing that can cause any damage. And we are good to go there. Then we do a little bit of yoga before we go out. Stretch out the legs from the point of the toe, not from here. Give him the other leg. Stretch out that leg. There you go, good boy. And then we go to the back. And we pick up that back leg. And we go up. And then we go forward and down. And this will stretch out all along the back. And we'll go around to the other one. He knows already. Look at it. He loves this. He knows it's good for him. And we go all the way down. Good boy. And we're going to put a bridle on. This is just a neck strap. We put these on every horse. Make sure you keep your hands down. Nobody should ride without a parachute. Is this your size? Yes, this is your bridle. So, most of our bits are a standard snaffle bit, like this one. Now, people like to talk about bits, not bits, bitless bridles. Bits are cruel. Let me show you. The mouth where the bit sits has no teeth right here. These are called the bars. The bit sits right here. This is a canine, and the molars start back here. I don't know if you can see that. And so the bit sits right in the middle of that. So we're going to put a bridle on. Up, open up, guy. And over the ears it goes. Now the Micklin bridle, the length of the bit is adjusted on two sides, this side and the other side, not like a standard bridle. And unlike a standard bridle throat latch, which is loose and goes behind, the Micklin bridle is snug and it goes in the middle of the jawline there. Tighten it like that. And the point of this bridle is that this point on the horse's head, right here, is where all of the nerves, the cranial nerves, come to an end. This bridle avoids that point, and it sits the nose band just where the end of these bones go, not too high, not lower, not to interfere with the breathing, and it keeps the mouth closed in a very kind way. This strap goes in front of the bit, and we tighten that, not too tight, but like this. So it's just a very gentle way of keeping the mouth closed. It's a very ergonomic bridle, very kind bridle. And the point of it is that it gives you the control of the whole horse's head, as opposed not to just pulling a bit back and forth. So I like this bridle a lot. Right, so ready to go. We are going to go off and do a bit of work. Hey, congratulations, you made it to the end of the video. Didn't think you had it in ya. Thanks for sticking with us. Please subscribe, leave your comments in the comment section, and we'll see you again soon for another fun video about horses.